Isn't winning in the National Hockey League just the best? It's even better when the Oilers remember how to score.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Victory Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. This is my 10th NHL season doing digital hockey content, my 4th as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and I want to thank everyone that is joining me for this Victory Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers, and to everyone who is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we've got your team covered every single day. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and you can use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So on today's edition, we are going to start out with why this game felt different. And we're going to frame that around the idea of taking the game as it comes to us. It's a complicated and oftentimes impossible challenge, but it is an integral part of adaptability. In our second segment, we're going to walk through some of the goals tonight. And yes, we have the season debut of the Locked On Oilers dry erase board, which I'm very excited to use to diagram a couple of the goals the Oilers put together tonight. That's how excited we are. And then in our final segment, we're going to break it down in a macro sense, why this game matters as far as proof of concept for what the Oilers can be. So, to set the table, happy Frozen Frenzy to those who were aware that was going on in the United States down here. If you were more preoccupied with the Jays game, I understand. I was checking in on that too. I know I am rooting for the Blue Jays. Very happy they were able to tie that series up after how the 18-inning game went. But for those of you who weren't on the up and up, down here in the States, ESPN was the reason all 32 NHL teams were in action tonight, the reason for all the staggered start times. So I'd been checking in on a couple of the other games in the Eastern time zone, that Devils Avalanche game that ended not that long ago, but very exciting game in the National, very exciting night, frankly, in the National. And coming into this game, this was my first real prolonged look at the Utah Mammoth and something that wasn't highlights. I'll be candid with you. I have not sat down and watched the Mammoth in full before tonight. I'd seen some highlights. I'd read a few articles, but I wanted to get an understanding of what was working for them, because on paper, I see the vision here. You've got a veteran-laden, responsible defensive core. You've got a couple really exciting young pieces. We all know how good Clayton Keller is. You trade for JJ Peterka. We've been waiting for the Logan Cooley emergence, and on paper, this team looks like it's going to hang around. I don't know about push for a playoff spot, but they should be a tough out. And in relation to how the Oilers have been playing, where it has been such a slog to get to offense, to find just goals, not even win hockey games. I'm saying find 3 or 4 goals with consistency. And that is bled over into the overarching theme that I have defined the first few weeks of this season. The Oilers don't really know what they want to be. And tonight, Utah gets out to a 2-0 lead. And I can't help but say, here we go again. In my notes for the first period, I wrote down, are we really doing this again? That's Skinner. The goal Skinner allows, because he misplays the puck behind the net, is inexcusable. At this point, with everything that has gone on, and look, as an aside, I grant this caveat. I like Stuart Skinner, the guy, a lot. I'm very endeared by him. Frankly, and I say this a lot, I feel bad he is in the position he is in because he's not this guy. And the Oilers, by virtue of the circumstances he was thrust into the role he's presently in, and by virtue of their status as contenders, they are really expecting him to be an NHL caliber starting goalie. And he's just not that guy. And a lot of it for Skinner is between the ears, even though his athleticism, of course, leaves a little bit to be desired, especially when it comes to going post to post. But at 2-0 off a Skinner stinker, predicated by a Darnell Nurse turnover, mind you, you're sitting here saying we're really going to do this again. And at 2-0 for a team that has struggled to score, it feels almost insurmountable. But the Oilers, for the first time this year, truly showed you some resiliency, some resolve, and showed you they have answers to problems as they come up. And that's what I mean as far as taking the game as it lies. First period, Utah is all over loose pucks. They're using their raw foot speed. They are a very quick team, especially their forecheck. They are making Oilers players make decisions sooner than they want to. That is the bread and butter of any strong forecheck in today's NHL. You want to speed up the process. You want to force guys to make a decision a split second sooner than they want to. Because even if they get the pass off, maybe because you sped them up a little bit, they can't get as much precision on it. They can't get as much velocity on it. And that matters. That has an impact. And as this game went along, Utah was swarming. Utah was getting on the forecheck. Utah was getting in pucks in deep. They weren't doing a whole lot as far as sustained offensive zone time, but they were getting the puck down there. They were playing the game in the Edmonton zone and more or less waiting the Oilers out. And that's why getting that goal as early as they do in the start of the second period on that Ekholm goal is so imperative, because we talk about it. All my everydayers are nodding their heads right now in agreement. These games hang in the balance of sliding door moments. You don't get that Ekholm goal, maybe you don't get the subsequent Draisaitl goal or Howard goal or whatever goal you're thinking of because of the game state. But Leon, and we're going to diagram that play because it is beautiful, and it is something the Oilers desperately need more of as far as creating dynamic opportunities to score. You get that goal. Draisaitl makes it happen. Ekholm converts. Okay, we're in this game now. Our feet are under us. It's 2-1. At 2-1, all we need is one bounce to go our way. And then what do you know? Ike Howard, someone who Chris Knobloch, I would say, is tepidly getting opportunities to, finds a way to make a play on the forecheck himself. Somebody who I would say is not known for his grinding, his forechecking, his board play. He makes the sequence happen that ultimately culminates in his second career NHL goal. And boom, we're douches wild. And the Oilers are fully in this game now. And you've scored 2 straight on Utah. You've got Utah a little bit on its heels. Utah, as we know, is a team that likes to live in transition. They want to break the puck out quickly. Their defenders, though individually talented, I really like Sergachev. I thought he was really good tonight, frankly, until the game kind of got out of hand. I have always, and I know there are Devils fans, I know there are Penguins fans about John Marino. I think John Marino is not a bad hockey player. The Utah defense is predicated on get the puck out, play as little defense as possible. They have a few guys who are on the bigger side, someone like an Ali Mata. You've got Ian Cole. You've got veterans, a lot of NHL experience, defensively responsible, tamp this game down, get the puck out. Let's play the game at the other end, and let's go up and down. And for most part, Edmonton was stuck in that track meet in the first period of win the puck, go down, one scoring chance. Okay, Utah gets the puck, come down. Utah gets 2 or 3 chances, then it comes back down. And when you're in that back and forth, that ping pong feeling, you can't get anything under you. But as the Oilers get this game to 2-2, that's where they can really start to sink their teeth into this. That's where they can start to make plays happen. And that's where they can start to take advantage. And you saw it. The Oilers smelled blood. You get the Draisaitl goal, and then we are off to the races. We are going to take our first break on today's Victory Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, I'm going to tell you why that first goal, that Mattias Ekholm goal, should be a sign of things to come. Hockey season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for a game. That is my single favorite feeling in the entire world. Walking down the tunnel, up the couple steps, you're met with that big flash of stadium light. You see the scoreboard, you see the ice, you hear music loud enough to make your skull vibrate, you smell hot dogs, you smell popcorn, you smell a cold beer, and everything is right in the world. But unfortunately, getting tickets is kind of a headache now. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where the Game Time app comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets, fast, easy, and stress-free. I haven't decided what game I want to get to. There's a couple I've been looking on both the Devils and the Rangers schedule, a couple teams I'm interested in seeing coming to town. But you guys know The only place I get tickets is through Game Time, and their ticket buying experience has the most important thing, in my opinion, the panoramic seat view. So when you open the Game Time app and you click on tickets, it's going to pull up a picture of what the view of the ice is going to look like from where you're sitting. So when you get there on game day, there are no surprises. And in certain NHL markets, you can find tickets for less than $25. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Thank you so much to everyone who is hanging out on this Victory Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. And as is becoming tradition, and I do think we're going to keep doing this at the start of the second segment for every show, win or lose, just a couple things to feel good about. It's a long season. You have to love the process or you're not going to make progress. You are going to go insane. Number one, I love seeing Ike Howard get rewarded with a goal. He has been around. He has been involved. He is making things happen. You get on the sheet. You buy yourself some leeway. Number two, I'm not the biggest fan of 11-7. I think oftentimes it's a byproduct of a coach who doesn't know who needs to come out and instead goes the other way. But it worked tonight. And the Oilers, by extension, by virtue of the way they assembled their lineup tonight, played one of, if not their best game all season. So you got some kudos for that. It was great to see McDavid and Draisaitl do their thing. I know they're both well on their way to point per game seasons again, but with goals being so hard to come by, it was nice to see both guys pick up multiple points. Great to see Bouchard pick up another couple assists as well. Good to see Jake Wallman starting to settle in as he gets further and further removed from that injury. Your hope is he'll keep ramping up. And then real quick, lastly, I was really happy with the play Adam Henrique makes to set up that that Ike Howard goal. And we'll get there. But I want to start our second segment by talking about the Mattias Ekholm goal. And yes, I'm going to pull up the dry erase board in a minute and walk you guys through this because it is beautiful. It is the ideal play structure. And it's something that on principles is as straightforward as it gets. So I'm going to grab the dry erase board and I'm going to walk you through where we're at. So if you're watching over on YouTube, this will help you. If you are not watching over on YouTube, if you're listening to this in audio, I am going to clip this. I will put this on social so you can see it because we have the dry erase board and it really helps the visualization. So you have heard me a lot through the first week or so of the season, first few weeks of the season, I should say, complain about the Oilers. Too much of this, too much cross seam, too much width, and not enough narrowness. We know the Oilers traditionally in the McDavid Draisaitl era have been at their best when the game is down here between the circles close to the net mouth when you are playing in a phone booth because it puts defenders in conflict and they have to make more difficult decisions. So this play starts out back here in the neutral zone. Draisaitl carries this puck in through traffic. He's got Roslovic trailing him. He pulls two Utah defenders in his general direction. So with Draisaitl gaining the half wall, he has an opportunity. He can either rim this puck all the way around, he can continue skating it, he can try and force this puck to the middle. But what makes this play great and why it works conceptually, because Roslovic is trailing him, Draisaitl can lay this puck off for Roslovic, which pulls this defender over here, and why Roslovic works as a trailer. So when you have that direct trailer, you pull a defender because they have to play against the drop pass. Draisaitl is good enough that he's going to pull two players to him. Bouchard is trailing this play with Logan Cooley in the neutral zone the entire way. That's not really pertinent, but I did want to make sure I had them in the visual. So Roslovic and Draisaitl are pulling 3 of the 5 defenders. Logan Cooley is behind in the neutral zone. So what this does, you've got a 3 against 2-on-1. So Podkolzin, sensing and realizing all of this space is here, he dives the net. And in diving the net, he pulls this defender slightly back from Draisaitl, but pulls Sergachev with him. So Podkolzin, and pulling 2 guys with him, leaves this entire swath of the ice wide open. So Ekholm can receive this cross-seam pass because Draisaitl's pulling 2 defenders, Roslovic has 1, Sergachev has Sergachev has Podkolzin. So Ekholm has all of this time to walk in. And then because Podkolzin drives the net, Sergachev's in front of the net, this defenseman's in front of the net, you've got traffic in front of Kara-Vejmelka. So you have everything you need here to generate a good scoring chance. And lo and behold, Mattias Ekholm absolutely blasts one. And you are in the game. So I walked you through that goal, and we're going to do the Ike Howard goal as well, because I do think that's a good example of following up, working for your offense, and then getting rewarded for good play. So that Draisaitl goal is so interesting because everything about it works. And look, obviously not everything works like you draw it up. It's very easy for me to diagram this play up on the dry erase board because it worked. I can't do it to the same extent if that results in a missed scoring chance or a save. But because everything works out, it's really easy for me to reverse engineer what that looks like. So I'm going to pause the recording. I'm going to diagram the Ike Howard goal, and I will be right back. Okay. Thanks to the magic of editing, you didn't have to sit through me re-diagramming a play, but this one is a lot more congested. This play is a lot more interesting because this is an effort play. This is not something that is as much a product of good process and structure as that Draisaitl goal to set up Ekholm was, because everybody does their assignments and it creates space. This one down here happens in the overlap. So Howard and Henrique down here at the bottom, they overlap with each other. 88 on Utah is the puck carrier. Howard strips it from him. Henrique wins this loose puck, sends it along. Stetcher intercepts at the half wall. Henrique circles back down behind the net. Stetcher up here, cuts this puck off, sends it back down low. So Henrique down here at the bottom, he has options. He can either send this back along up to Stetcher, or he can send this back up along the wall, but he sees Howard cutting to the middle. These Utah players are all in a blender at this point, and that's where the overlap on that type of play along the wall becomes valuable and becomes dangerous. Because Howard and Henrique are occupying the same general space, assignments get a little bit congested. Savoy here is pulling defenders to some extent. Wallman is trailing, Stetcher's up at the point as well. So this play happens because Howard makes it. Howard gets here, not tackles, I should say. That's soccer terminology. You'll excuse me. He strips the defender of the puck here when Utah's trying to get this out. And Utah's got options for a breakout. But because Howard works here and wins this loose puck, he's able to extend the play. And when we're talking about just offensive zone time and struggling to get things done, and we're going to talk about this a lot in our final segment today, when you're struggling to get offense, to score consistently, if you at least have good process, you can start to chip away at your problem. And that's an example of a player recognizing a situation and making something happen, not just for himself, but for his whole team. If they don't score, that takeaway, the Howard takeaway, I probably don't remember it. It doesn't stick in my mind. But because it ultimately leads to a goal, it ties the game. It puts you in such a good position to, as a player, feel good about what we're doing, because you were just down 2-0. And then in a 3-4 minute window, we tied this game at 2-2 against a young team, a one that wants to play in transition, go back and forth. Okay. We're in business now. If we're the Oilers, we see an opportunity here to create some dangerous offense, to get pucks where we need to. And because you're doing that hard work, because you're winning those 50-50 pucks, or you're outright forcing takeaways, you're creating more opportunities for yourself. You know, we've been talking a lot about, and everydayers have heard me complaining about this, low event hockey. We're not getting as many chances. Well, if we don't have enough chances, we got to make more. And winning loose pucks, forechecking aggressively, winning 50-50 pucks, forcing takeaways, those are examples of players recognizing, okay, we need to do more. Let's do it. And coming up next on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, I'm going to explain why that mentality is so encouraging for a team that's struggling for an identity. Thank you so much to everyone who is hanging out on this Victory Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. I want to thank the Locked On Oilers Dry Erase Board for making its season debut. It's nice when the Oilers give us things to break down that are exciting and fun. because there's nothing better than winning in the National Hockey League. And it's a long season. There's a whole lot more conjecture to indulge. There are a whole lot more storylines to identify, develop, and ultimately evaluate. But in this early going, the Oilers offense has not been where it's needed to. Yesterday's episode was summarily titled, "Where is the Oilers offense?" And tonight was the first real time all season you saw a coherent attack that looked like something the Oilers could do repeatedly. And the thing that stuck out is they were able to create goals in transition. And those transition goals, especially I think of the Draisaitl Ekholm one, that's directly a product of Draisaitl creating a zone entry for himself, having the threat of the drop pass off the zone entry, Podkolzin off the zone entry as a possible lane. And with all of that conflict for defenders to evaluate, Utah misplays it. Leon pulls 2, Podkolzin pulls 1, Logan Cooley's floating in the neutral zone. So it's a 2-on-1. The Utah player has to pick who he goes to. He goes with Podkolzin. He leaves Ekholm open. Okay, straightforward. When you have those opportunities, and the two most dangerous types of goal in hockey, transition and cross seam. Why? Because you're making players make decisions. The more decisions you can introduce into a given sequence, whether we're talking about a goalie trying to go post to post, defenders trying to pick, do I go with shot or do I go with pass? The more variance, the more variables you introduce, the more likely you are to get something to go your way, to get something to break right. And those transition goals directly lead to the subsequent ones. And that bleeds over into the game state and the style conversation we were having in that opening segment. Because in a game like this, where Utah is trying to get to offense, they want to break out, they want to get there quickly, you can play into that. And it might not necessarily get you what you want. And that's why the Howard goal in particular stuck out, and it's why it was this other one I wanted to diagram, because that's an example of what happens to Utah when they're trying to break out, because you have guys floating around. You have 3 guys who are all waiting to receive that breakout pass, and I'm looking over at the dry erase board to make sure my numbers are right. But the player who turns the puck over to Howard has 3 outlet passes he can make, and he takes 1 extra step. Howard forces that puck loose, Henrique wins it, and the play goes on. Those forechecking plays, those grinding plays, that board play, all of those little details, that is something that is non-negotiable. That is something that if you can commit to it and stick to it, will yield results. It's not the same type of conversation as, can we get our transition game going? Can we get our... No. If you consistently are winning board battles, if you are winning 50-50 pucks, if you are forcing turnovers, you are making more possessions in the game. You are giving yourself more opportunities to stay in the offensive zone, to force the other team to play defense. And even if you don't score, you put heat on the goalie. You tire out the defenders. Maybe you draw a penalty. Those are all the little things, and why it's so important that you find what you can do. And you guys have heard me talk about this a lot. The idea of playing to our strengths. What can we do better than them? And what about our team allows us to do that? And I liked how little Connor and Leon overlapped tonight at 5-on-5. I think this was the first time I genuinely felt good about that this year. And real quick, as we wrap up today's show, I understand why Chris Knobloch has continued to juggle these lines. I do. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. And in that desperation, he may have stumbled upon something here, because conceptually, I really like what I saw from Jack Roslovic tonight. I know that first play he makes where he almost scores ultimately ends up in the back of the Edmonton net because guys get caught a little bit out of position. But Roslovic, the last 2-3 games, I would say, has really started to find his game. And anytime someone misses preseason, doesn't participate in training camp, you got to give them a little bit of a grace period to ramp up, to get themselves in game shape. But him, Podkolzin, and Draisaitl, it's not very different from what we saw with Leon, Podkolzin, and Arvidsson last year. I would dare say Jack Roslovic is probably a better goal scorer at this stage of his career than Victor Arvidsson, but we'll see. I really liked what I saw from McDavid with Mangiapane yet again. I knew the Mangiapane fit was there. It was just simply a matter of where he was going to end up playing ultimately. I think that was going to dictate what he brought to the table. But the capacity for something interesting is here. So you got Mangiapane, Nuge, and McDavid. They do a nice job at 5-on-5. They finally get rewarded. That's great. Roslovic, Podkolzin, and Draisaitl had the best night of any Oilers forward line. 2 5-on-5 goals, 70% of the shots on goal, outright domination. Now, Savoy, Henrique, and Frederick, they kind of got their doors blown off in their own end, but that's fine. That's kind of what you expect from a defensive line. And Henrique did get an assist on the Howard goal, so I'll give Unc a little bit of grace for getting his doors blown off a little bit of 5-on-5 when it comes to the underlying numbers. But this is the type of game you can build on. And we'll keep having to talk about Stuart Skinner as long as he is a conversation. I know with each passing day, there will be increased chattering. I'm not saying from the Oilers or from the people who cover the Oilers, but I know there will be increased grumbling about, can we get Connor Ingram up here sooner rather than later? And we can entertain that conversation in a little bit. But this is the type of game that gives everybody a little bit of confidence. It tells Ike Howard, okay, I can offer more than what I've done so far. For Jack Roslovic, it's if I keep playing well, I'll get to keep playing with Leon. For Mangiapane and Nuge, if we keep cooking on Connor's wings, we're going to at least have a conversation when Zach Hyman comes back, or the next time an injury pops up, I have an opportunity to get back into the top 6. And whenever Zach Hyman does come back, that introduces a good problem for the Oilers, because it means you get to drop someone from this group and everybody gets to slide down a spot. But for right now, enjoy this one. It's a good win. Utah's been a really good hockey team, and I know that might be weird. I know for some people like me who hadn't really checked in on Utah this year yet, that probably a bit of a shock, but that's a good win. To go down 2-0 to a good team, come all the way back and win in a convincing blowout way, that's a really good feeling as a hockey fan. That's a good win. That will do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much to everyone who made Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. To everybody who's jumping on board the last few weeks, I see you, everybody, all the new listeners on YouTube or on the audio formats. I see you. I appreciate you. I'm glad you're getting on board. Hopefully tonight is a sign of things to come. We can start doing more of these breakdowns, start to have a bit more of an exciting, fun conversation, as opposed to praying the puck is eventually going to go in the net, which has been much of what the first 3 weeks of this season are. For your second listen, be sure to check out Locked On NHL Game Night, where they are breaking down every game, every night. I don't know about tonight. 16 games might be a little tough in a 30-minute show, but every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned in June. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.